A few hours ago, the Russian president's press secretary, Dmitry Peskov, officially confirmed that Russia had indeed issued a harsh ultimatum to the Kiev regime. In particular, Moscow demanded that Kiev withdraw its troops from the remaining territory of Donbass by the end of May 2026. According to Dmitry Peskov, if the Kiev regime refuses to withdraw Ukrainian units before the end of the announced deadline, Russia will significantly tighten its demands on Ukraine. Dmitry Peskov notes that there is currently a real hysteria among representatives of the Kiev regime, as they are well aware that if Ukraine once again refuses to comply with Russia's demands, they will face even more painful consequences. Kremlin spokesman, speaking to reporters, stressed that Moscow had repeatedly called on representatives of the Kiev regime to gain the will and make a decision that would allow Ukraine to come to an agreement with Russia, as a result of which the suffering of the Ukrainian people would end once and for all. However, the Kiev junta, led by Zelensky, continues to reject all Russian proposals, realizing full well that this will only worsen the state of Ukraine. By the way, Zelensky himself also confirmed that Russia had given him until the end of May to withdraw Ukrainian troops from Donbass. At the same time, this political clown stressed that he would never agree to fulfill Russia's demands, as this would be a strategic defeat for Ukraine. It is obvious that this bearded dwarf, and his Western masters, absolutely do not give a damn how many Ukrainian soldiers will die if Ukraine refuses to leave Donbass. Meanwhile, it became known that European globalists, right after handing over €90 billion to Ukraine, demanded that representatives of the Kiev regime significantly tighten the mobilization policy in the country. In particular, the so-called European leaders are demanding that Kiev amend existing draft laws, which would allow young people over the age of 25 to be sent to the front. And judging by the information coming from Kiev, the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine is preparing not only to start sending young people at the age of 25 to the front, but also to completely cancel the reservation on the mobilization, which will allow sending almost all citizens of Ukraine to the war against Russia, except for employees of defense enterprises. Furthermore, European states, including Poland and Germany, have already promised to deport all Ukrainians under the age of 25 to Ukraine, for their further transfer to the front. By the way, Volodymyr Zelensky supported this decision of Europe. According to this white powder lover, the deportation of Ukrainian citizens from European countries will significantly strengthen the combat capability of the Ukrainian army. Thus, it becomes clear that representatives of the Kiev regime and their Western masters really intend to fight to the last Ukrainian. Meanwhile, on April 27, war correspondents said that Russian army units began entering the strategically important city of Konstantinovka from the northwestern outskirts. It is worth noting that numerous Ukrainian military TG channels also confirm this information. It is reported that with each new day, there are more and more Russian soldiers in the city. At the same time, it is worth noting that the current situation in Konstantinovka is very similar to the storming of Pokrovsk. War correspondents note that the Russians are using the same tactics in Konstantinovka that they had used during the liberation of Pokrovsk and Mirnograd. In particular, small Russian assault groups continue to infiltrate the city from various directions, causing panic in the ranks of Ukrainian soldiers. It is worth noting that the Ukrainian army's position in Konstantinovka deteriorated significantly right after Russian troops managed to completely destroy all supply routes of the Ukrainian group in this strategically important city. At the moment, the Russian army is in full control of all entrances and exits to Konstantinovka. All attempts by Ukrainians to break through to their comrades in this city result in heavy losses for them both, in manpower and equipment. It is reliably known that as of April 27, the Russian army controls 68% of the city's territory. In fact, the Ukrainian troops have found themselves in a real semicircle and are simply trying to survive in the current situation. However, the General Staff of Ukraine still does not give an order to its units to withdraw from this city. My dear truth seekers, it is worth noting that the General Staff of Ukraine also refused to order its units to leave Pokrovsk and Mirnograd. As a result, the Ukrainian army's 7 brigades, that were defending these cities, were completely destroyed. It seems the same fate awaits the Ukrainian brigades, defending Konstantinovka. Meanwhile, on the night of April 26, the Ukrainian army, with the help of intelligence received from British AWACS aircraft, once again attacked the Crimean Peninsula. According to Sevastopol Governor Mikhail Razbozev, even though Russian air defense systems managed to shoot down all 43 enemy drones, 1 civilian was killed, and 3 others were seriously injured, due to the debris of those drones. It is noteworthy that right after that, Russia launched a coordinated missile strike on Odessa and Chernomorsk. It is well known that during this attack, Russian missiles and kamikaze drones hit dozens of weapons depots, petrol tanks, freight transport, and administrative buildings. In addition, in the southern part of Chernomorsk, the Russian military wiped out the city's port infrastructure. My friends, it is worth noting that attacks by Ukrainian drones on Russian territory are very annoying to Russian generals, who demand more decisive and tough actions from Putin. In particular, the former head of the Russian General Staff, Army General Yuri Balyevsky, called on Vladimir Putin to abandon the so-called red lines and allow the Russian army to demonstrate its full might on the battlefield. According to General Balyevsky, no one cares about these red lines, and the lack of an adequate Russian response to drone and missile attacks on its territory only provokes further escalation, as the enemy grows even more impudent. General Balyevsky argues that Russia's enemies understand only the language of force, and that Moscow has to make them afraid, otherwise, according to him, enemy drones and missiles will fly all over Russia, including Siberia. My friends, it's worth noting that almost all Russian generals say similar things. According to them, Putin should stop restricting the Russian army's actions on the battlefield, since the major war has already begun. Furthermore, Russian generals are also calling on Putin to allow them to begin destroying military installations on the territory of NATO states that actively support the Kiev regime. According to them, this is the only way Russia can defeat the Ukrainian NATO coalition in this war.